Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show, where we are talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their businesses and is here to share their experience, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today, I am so excited to welcome Barbara Evans. Barbara is a graphic and web designer and owns Wild Blackberry Studio. I just love that name. She's a brand champion for small businesses that want to make a difference in the world, and she has had tremendous year of growth, but in her business as well as a business owner. And I can't wait for her to share her journey with you. So welcome to the show, Barbara, and thanks so much for taking the time to share your story today.
Hi, thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're here. And this is our last episode before the holidays. And so you are coming in this very festive time to talk about your very festive year you've had in your business.
I've got my festive accoutrement here too.
Oh, I love your festive. Barbara has festive stars. If you're watching the video, you can see it in her back. So I want to dive into your story because I am intimately familiar with having worked with you all this year. And I'm so, so proud of you for everything that you've done. And I just want to hear all about it. So why don't you just get started? Tell me how did you get into this business? What was that sort of big trigger for you getting started in your business?
Well, so I actually officially started my business in January of 2013. So that's like maybe 7 years next month, right? That's math, right? So prior to that, for a couple of years, I'd been working for a long time as an executive in managed care. And then this recession kind of thing hit and I got laid off. And I had been involved in marketing and those kind of projects at the managed care company and found myself like full of all these ideas, but frustrated at having to hand them off to someone else to execute. So I was like, you know what? I've got some time here while I'm collecting unemployment. I'm going to go back to school for this art stuff. And I've always been kind of creative and involved in art and kind of doing art on the side. So I went to designs like a 2-year program to get the software skill sets and some of the design fundamentals. And when I finished that program, kind of hung out my shingle and had my first client, who's still with me, by the way, and slowly have been kind of evolving what I do and how I do it, especially in the last year.
Especially, that's right. And I love your story because you came from a very kind of non-creative. Now, here's the thing is I think everybody's creative. I think every role is creative. If you're solving problems, if you are doing anything, you're creative. But you went from this very traditionally creative role into this very creative role, and you kind of followed your dreams. And that must have been like a bit of a scary decision for you.
Well, it was and it wasn't because I had a safety net, I have a part-time job with a small boutique healthcare company. And they do really amazing work, kind of at the front edge of what's happening in healthcare. And I do design and marketing and all that stuff for them. And they give me a paycheck and they provide me with benefits. So I've got that security, which made it really so much easier to stick my neck out and be like, hi, I'm a designer,
I think that's testament to something that's like quite real for people that going out and Sally Ann talked about this too in our episode, but going out and just doing the work and that first gig where someone has actually hired you as this thing you are now. I mean, that's a huge mental jump, right? That's a huge psychological piece of getting started as your own business owner, right?
Mm-hmm. It is. And I think one of the themes around that's been coming up for me all year is this idea of trust, and not just having other people trust you, but you trusting yourself. And sometimes that trust is something that happens over time. You do things, you have success, you're like, oh, I can do this. And sometimes trust is just a giant leap of like, I'm going to do this. And then you go and then you do it.
We've had a lot of conversations about trusting yourself personally, but also in the group, right? In the group that we are part of. And that's a huge theme with business owners that are even the ones who have been in business for a little while, is learning to trust yourself and learning to be okay with taking a bit of a leap, because what's the worst that's going to happen, right?
Yeah. The worst that's going to happen is you get some good information. You know that a thing's not for you, you know? Yeah. And the best that happens is you get some more good information. You're like, yeah, this is the thing for me. I'm excited about this, or this worked, or, you know, I did it.
Right. So. And did you have that kind of big aha moment when you did your first gig, or was it like, okay, I think I can make this work, but
yeah. No, I think for a lot of years early on in my business, I was tentative and dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, gosh, I'm not a designer. Who am I kidding? You know, I can't do this. But kind of plowing through that anyway. And like, well, someone's giving me money, so I might as well keep doing it, you know? But no, I think I wasn't sure I was doing the right thing for a while. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work, especially certain kinds of the work. But I wasn't necessarily tuned in like I am now to the kind of projects that I like and what I don't want to do. I think early on I wasn't clear on what I didn't want to do. So I was kind of taking a kitchen sink approach, you know, and I think a lot of people do that. They're like, gosh, someone's gonna give me money for this. I've got to throw in all these other things, and I've got to do everything, and I've got to be good at everything, and the social media and this graphics and the writing. And no, you can be good at, like, you can pick a lane and focus there. And I think it's one of the things you talk about is like when you're doing the right thing that you like, there's not friction, you know? And when you're doing, like when I was doing some of my early web projects, had me also doing content, hated it, so much procrastination, you know? And so I was kind of like, stop doing it then, you know? Like there will be other people who pay you money to do things that you like to do. So.
And do you think, I mean, that mindset is a really important one. And I think, you know, I try to counsel my clients to get to that place where they give themselves permission to just do the thing that they really want to do. But there's a lot of scarcity in there, and there's a lot of like self-judgment. So what helped you get to that place where you were like, you know what, I don't need to do all this stuff?
I think, you know, at the risk of giving you a shameless plug, it's being in your 6-month accelerator program and the mindset work that we did, and really kind of dig, you know, like getting clear about who our ideal customers are, and how do we want to work, and what kind of life do I want to have, and what mental blocks are in the way, and do I trust myself to make the right decisions for me and my business? And we did all that, you know, and so that was, you know, it was 6 months of, oh, okay, I get it now. So that really helped.
Okay, but so you did the 6-month program earlier this year, but you've continued to have this amazing year of growth and maturity. So what are some of the big things that have happened for you this year? I'm thinking through, like, it's such a catalog of things. Like my business and me now compared to this time 12 months ago is so radically different. You know, like I'm thinking about this time, I was just getting ready to start your course, and I was like, oh, I should probably update my website so that I'm ready to do things. And so tentative and so afraid of being seen, you know, because people might actually want me to do something for them, or they might hire me if they see me. Gasp, you know. So big things that happened this year. I have taken on some of the biggest projects that I've taken on to date. I have significantly increased my pricing, and that was
that's always, I think, a little bit of a challenge, because you're like, oh my gosh, people aren't going to, if I charge too much, people aren't going to hire me. It's not true. Like you're sending a message with your pricing. It filters in the right people. All these things that everyone here listening already knows. But it was, I think that's a particular challenge for me because there's also personal work that goes along with that. That's like, here's the business work and I need to charge more, but here's the personal work about how am I valuing my time and my worth, and my abilities. So like those things go together. So in addition to the business work, I've been doing a lot of personal work too. I made some great connections, and some of those people are bringing me really amazing projects, and we must have the same kind of ideal client because everyone she's brought me, I'm like, I love this project and these people, so that's been really exciting. I'm getting lots of work that I actually am excited about, not that I wasn't excited before, but like really energizing kind of things.
And you did a lot of work on really defining like what that work is and who you want to work with. And I think you also did a lot of personal work too. Like I saw you really make a huge transformation as a business owner. And that's part of what, talking about the program, that's part of what I want everybody to do is learn business is actually a skill that you learn, right? It's not, you don't just learn the tactics, you learn how to be a business owner. And I want everyone to come out of this program being a more mature business owner, not just having a whole bunch of tactics in their back pocket. So I'm curious because one of the things that I think you did really well was you totally learned how to be more visible and how to make connections with people in different ways than you'd been doing before. And that had a big impact on your business because you had a financial growth this year too, right?
Yeah, very much so. Like my I don't know what the right term is. My overall revenue, my gross revenue before I take out tax, all that stuff, compared to last year, more than double, which is a big deal. In terms of timing in my personal life, I have sort of this little window of time when I need to sort of make my business support me. And I did it 2 years ahead of schedule, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. What was your original question?
So the question was you started showing up in a really
Right.
different,
Yeah.
in a really different way, in a more consistent way. You started making connections in places that you hadn't before. So I think that's a really valuable piece that people can learn from you. What did you start doing that you weren't doing before?
I think a couple of things, really surprisingly simple things. It's just networking. Like for me, most of my clients are, word of mouth and personal connections. So kind of nurturing those connections, reaching out to people on a regular basis, and then, cultivating the ones that are with people that are like parallel to my business and that I really jive with, that like we have the same mindset about the way we work and the way we want to treat our clients. And, those are the sources of really great new opportunities for me. I also, have been trying to be disciplined about showcasing my work. And so I'm putting more things out regularly on my website. When I finish a project, I've actually got a process in place for that. I'm sharing that on social media. I decided to get a little bit more active on LinkedIn and, and then I'm involved in some other Facebook groups that are kind of my right people too. And just, I'm trying to be visible and of service in those places. So I don't have to come in there being like, hey, used car sales gal here. I'm just kind of like, hey, I think I can help with that, which is totally different.
And you've grown in a really sustainable way. So I want to ask you a little bit about your growth. So what does growth mean to you? Because a lot of people will equate growth with financial growth, and you've had financial growth. You more than doubled your revenue this year, which is amazing. Yeah. But there's so much more to your growth than just the money.
Yeah. So I think hand in hand with that visibility is cultivating some self-confidence in my ability to deliver what people want, and that, that I've I create an experience for my clients. It's not just kind of like, hey, we talk about a thing, I go away, there's radio silence, and then I come back and deliver the thing. It's actually a very collaborative, interactive process. And I think that's just right for my ideal client. They want to be involved. So kind of trusting that that was the right process for me, and kind of creating offers and services around that. And kind of doing a lot of work on the imposter syndrome stuff, because I know that's out there for so many people. No matter what you're doing, you always have these moments of like, is this really me doing this? Is this okay? Am I okay? And figuring out that, yeah, like the way I have good things to offer my clients and interesting ideas, and they're hiring me because they want to work with me. And so I've shifted from, when someone asks me to do a thing, being like, oh shit, I can't do this, to being like, I wonder how I would solve that problem, which is really a lot more comfortable place to be,
So let's dig into that for a second,
yeah.
because this is a huge issue for 98% of business owners out there that I know and I work with. How have you worked through imposter syndrome? Because it's not just a matter of saying, oh, well, have some good self-talk and convince yourself you're good at what you do.
Yeah.
There are some really specific strategies that I think you employ, and I would love to hear your experience on those.
Okay. I think what I started with at first was gathering feedback. So talking to clients about, what did you like about the experience? What could I have done better? And then when I get positive feedback, accepting that as true, like not second guessing it. I also see a therapist regularly. It's because it's personal, right? Like it's not just a business thing. It's really kind of fundamental to a whole bunch of the ways our life experiences and the way we talk to ourselves. So kind of digging into that. And then being intentional about noticing successes and talking about successes. And, when I'm completing something, saying, this is what I think was good about that. This is what I think went well. And also being mindful about that. I know we just talked about the self-talk, like how am I thinking about this project? Am I being afraid or am I being curious? And interrupting kind of the negative things. But it took time, like it wasn't something that happened overnight. It's been an ongoing process all year,
And I think that's what I was going to just point out is like the thing to remember about imposter syndrome is that everybody has it and everybody's going to experience it at some point in time. And it's a very natural thing for us to encounter. Yeah. But getting past it is not something that happens right away, right? You don't just decide you're not going to have imposter syndrome. Right. This is a long and intentional process. This is why the 6-month program is 6 months long. Mm-hmm. This is why we develop habits and we focus on developing habits. And the celebration habit is one of those things because it is working towards breaking down that imposter syndrome. So just like anything else that we do in business, breaking down those negative thoughts and those limiting beliefs and all of the things that we pile upon ourselves is a long and intentional process. It is something that you have to do intentionally. It is not something that you just kind of have hanging out in the back of your mind. And you've done a really great job of being very intentional about that and shifting the original thoughts that you were having. And it's made a huge difference to your business and a huge difference to your outcomes. So I keep telling people like, getting to financial success is actually not that much about your pricing or your offers, or we want to get those in line, but that alignment is a huge piece, and then your mental state is a huge piece of that too. So all of these things have to be dealt with at the same time, right?
Yeah. And I think there was one key thing that you said to me during the program when I was sort of deep in the where is my imposter syndrome coming from, what's it about, and I was still at that point very often seeking outside validation. Like, is this work okay? What do you think about this? Guys, here's what I'm thinking. And you had suggested that at some point I need to cut myself off from that crutch, because you can rely on that forever and then you're not getting anywhere, like you're constantly seeking that external validation at some point. And we're back to the idea of trust again. At some point you have to trust that you know what's good and that you can deliver good work.
And trusting that your energy is going to, and I'm not a woo-woo person, but trusting that your energy is going to bring the right people to you. And it's okay if not everybody says yes.
Well, and that's it too. Like not every, I even remember from design school, like sometimes the idea is just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. And sometimes it's a grind. You have to kind of grind through some terrible ideas to get to something okay, and I sort of realized at the end of it, like if I had a client that hated what I did, I could just give them their money back. Like that's the worst possible outcome. That's not terrible, and luckily that hasn't happened yet. So,
I wrote a post the other day about one of the most impactful statements someone has made to me in the past. And, it was working, in a consulting capacity at the time. And someone said to me, you know what, Stephanie, we're not saving lives.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, God, you're right. We're not saving lives. Nobody's going to die.
Siren on your office or your car,
Totally. So nobody's going to die if this thing doesn't happen exactly the way I planned it to happen or when I had planned it to happen. So that's not an excuse to, sit back and just not
do whatever. Sure.
Not care, but it's also, it takes the pressure off, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes the pressure off of having to get things done and on a certain timeline. Now you are really good at this. You are really good at balancing your work and your personal life. You are really good at taking care of yourself and making sure that part kind of stays in your life. So can you tell me a little bit about how you ensure that all of the things, you're a runner, you have other practices, all these other things need to stay boundaried in your business?
Yeah. So I think I realized that one of the other things that had been going on in my business for a long time was that I only ever worked, just working. And I realized that I was exhausted at the end of every day, and it's not how I want to be at the end of every day, so I realized that I needed to get up from my desk sometimes. And I started scheduling in time to do things, like I love running mid-morning best. That's when I'm going to do it. So I schedule it in there. I work with an awesome trainer and she gets me workouts that I can fit in my day, or corrective stretching that I can get up and do and just kind of get the blood flowing and clear my mind. Sometimes if I'm really feeling frustrated with a project, I'll get up and just play on the piano for 15 minutes. And don't let that sound like I know how to play the piano. I can play like 3 things only, but I get up and do it because it's a totally different part of the brain and it's a complete reset. And meditate almost every day. And that's, and it's super important to me. It's a way to kind of, I won't say clear my head because that's not really what meditation is about, but it's kind of like brings me back down to earth, like if my head's racing about business stuff, I'm like, okay, now I'm just gonna kind of recenter. And eating, gotta remember to eat.
Yeah.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks, whatever,
Weird how our bodies need that, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that happened when I first started getting more intentional about scheduling my work to make sure I got everything done and was managing that time, I scheduled the whole day, like the whole day was work. It's not a bathroom break, not a pause, not a meal, nothing. And I was like, this is a terrible idea. So,
I love that, right? And one of the modules in my program that we've done is all about work scheduling and like, here's the thing. I want to put the control back in your hands. If you don't have time for something, that's your fault, right? Yeah. You have done that. You have created that circumstance. And the good news is that means you can change it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody is taking your time. You own your time. And I think it's a mindset shift that a lot of business owners have to get into, that they get to decide, and that there is nobody sort of sitting over their shoulder and saying, what did you do today? What
Yeah.
did you work on today? What does your schedule look like today? I mean, it took me probably a few years before I was like, well, if I want to work out at 1:30 every day, I just have to put that in my calendar.
Yeah. But
Right.
I think a lot of us who come from corporate world struggle with that a little bit, because we're used to that bizarre 9 to 5 regimen of like, only do all this thing all day, and you maybe get a half hour to eat lunch at your desk because nowhere's close enough for you to leave and go eat, so you kind of get into that. It's sort of a culturally accepted thing, right?
Yep.
And so then we maybe, I know at first when I used to go for runs in the morning, would feel a little bit guilty. And I'm like, why? I'm still getting my work done for my clients. And if I work better after 6 p.m. on certain kinds of things, that's the best time for me to work on that,
And that's a funny thing, because even in the corporate world, I used to have a whole blog about like the way that we work, right? Way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing in the corporate world is that they're still time punching, right? They're still equating value to the amount of hours that you sit at your desk.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the corporate world, there's been a push for a long time to get to what's called, outcome-based compensation, or outcome-based whatever management by objective is really what it's called. And that's where the concept is like, what do you have to deliver? What kind of value are you adding to the company? Are you actually doing that? Great. Do I care when you do that? Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want to spend all this time working people into these weird schedules? I used to run a business that was focused on caregivers, so unpaid, unprofessional caregivers that were, and there's a huge impact on their ability to work, because they have family members or friends, or we have stuff in our lives
Mm-hmm.
that affect us being able to show up 9 to 5 in an office.
Right.
If I can still deliver that work, who cares when I'm doing it? And now that you have a whole bunch of clients that all they care about is that you're doing what you promised you would do for them, now that means you can design your life. You really
Mm-hmm.
can. So yes, I teach business, but I'm also teaching like life design. This is how
Yeah.
you get what you actually want in your life. And I don't care who you are or what constraints you have. And you're a great example of that. You can have what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And it's not like it's perfect all the time, like I've probably overbooked myself a little bit right now, but that's, like that's on me to deal with. And so I'm being really careful about making sure I'm keeping up with everything and squeezing in little bits of self-care, and with the understanding that I'm going to ideally not do this to myself again, that it's, it was important information for me. And I, in general, don't want to be working this intensely. So I'm going to make sure I don't land here again.
Great. And it's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be okay as long as you're conscious of it. And we have these cycles in our business. I'm in launch mode right now. We are launching the group program again for January. And it's crazy, right? This is not how I want to live, but I know it's temporary.
Right.
I know it's like going away soon. Not that soon, but soon enough.
Soonish.
Yeah. And like, it's okay. So I think a lot of people get really worked up if they've had the experience where life has been okay, and then they have these sort of periods of busyness. Look, it's fine. It's fine because you're conscious of it and you're aware of it, and it's going to change. Mm-hmm. So I think I like that you've kind of rolled with it, and that you are understanding that this is your best case scenario, but this is how, we're going to get back to what I want.
Yeah.
They're a little out right now. So let's talk a little bit more about the work that you do. So tell me how you work with your clients. What's your signature offer? Who do you work with?
Big questions. What kind of work do I do? So how do I explain it? So I have a couple of what I think of as my anchor clients. I have folks that have me on a retainer, and I'm basically their in-house designer. I do everything design for them. So it's hard. and then I think for the other clients where I'm doing project package based kind of work, it's usually pretty custom, because that's just how I like to work. I like to talk to the client, find out what they're really looking for, and then kind of create something around that. But more and more, when I'm finding that people are needing from me are, if they've got an existing business, they need some definition around their brand. And so more and more, I'm taking them through this kind of visual process where we're identifying the components they want to include around their logo, and then creating a brand guide for them and giving them some rules so that they can go out into the world and have their brand look gorgeous and consistent. So increasingly, I'm doing a lot of that kind of work. I'm also finding that although I do, WordPress web stuff myself, I'm doing more and more consulting around the design and then working with the developer to make that happen, which is so much more fun, by the way. Not that I don't like doing WordPress, it's kind of fun, but I'd so much rather work with a developer who's got all that stuff dialed in. And I'm just like, look, this is how it's going to be pretty, So I'm doing a lot of that kind of stuff. Got the chance to work on some really cool logo projects this year, which I love. I don't like to do too many of those at once. I like to kind of do those one at a time because they require a lot of thought, and I don't like different company concepts because they tend to bleed together, when I'm doing a creative process. So I want to make sure I'm kind of doing those one at a time. So like having those peppered in along with the brand definition stuff, and then a lot of times out of those projects, we start working on, do they need layouts for content? Like sometimes it's a PowerPoint master, sometimes it's a white paper template that I'm plugging stuff that I'm creating and plugging stuff into. You know what I mean? So it's what comes next for their business that I can help them with. So.
Oh, I like that. So that's the definition of kind of where you fly in is those guys who are at that point where they've kind of gotten to the place and they're like, okay, what's next for my business, right? Mm-hmm. As a creative professional, and I work with a bunch of creative professionals, you guys all have this same challenge, right? How do you want to work? Because it's not like you just sit down and you're like, oh, I'm going to be creative right now, and it's just going to come. I'm going to do it in an hour, right? Yeah. And I think what's interesting and what I've been curious about, that a lot of the work that I do is around building a work schedule that works for people individually. And you creatives are particularly challenging because that is not like, I can't just sit down for an hour and be creative, right? Mm-hmm. So you're each a little different, and that has to do with your personalities. But what do you think are the key? What's the key thing that you've learned about being able to be a creative professional and be productive?
I think some of it is understanding what I need to have in my creative process. So I know for me, there's almost like this visual data gathering process at the beginning. I've got to look at things. I've got to research. It's almost like cutting stuff out of magazines and, looking and seeing what other people have done in the space and kind of gathering a whole bunch of visual impressions and then giving that time to kind of whatever it does in there, and then I usually have kind of depending on what it is I'm designing, like a warm-up activity that I do. And it could be something really simple, like taking a picture and putting it in Illustrator and tracing it. And I know that seems really simple, but it gets those right parts of the brain firing. And then from there, I can start carrying that over into what's the next step that I need to be doing for this design. Or it could be, looking at all their assets so far and trying to identify what I think they have in common and then working with those commonalities.
That is super interesting to me because that is the key to being able to build a business around a creative skill set is finding a way to processize. I think I just made up a word there. Make a process out of being creative. And that is that's the gold in the hills. And I'm not sure that a lot of people have figured it out, but what's kind of cool about what you're doing is you're like, okay, I know what works for me. yes, the creative process is just inherently open-ended, but I know the things that are going to trigger me to be able to get to that place faster. And that is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of writers. I work with a lot of copywriters. I work with a lot of designers. I work with a lot of people who have that like constant friction between, I have a deadline, but I also need to, it's a creative deadline. So what the heck, those are like, that's a juxtaposition. I love that you have created this way of being able to stimulate that process. And sometimes I'm guessing it doesn't come as fast, and sometimes it's much more quick, but you know, that immersion at the initial part of your creative process is super interesting to me.
And sometimes sometimes it really is weird. Like I've been processing the information, and I'll be in the shower, or I'll wake up in the middle of the night, or I'll be at the grocery store and be like, this idea. And I'm sending myself a text about, don't forget this idea, because I want to actually work it through later, and I don't always remember.
I like the ones that come from the middle of the night and you're like, what the heck did this mean?
What was that? Yeah. Like some of those, when I finally sit down to work them out, I'm like, this is a terrible idea. But sometimes you have to work through the terrible idea to get to the good idea. I find that part of the process too. Like if I'm really stumped, I'll get out my sketch pad and just make myself draw as many ideas as possible for like 5 minutes and not spend more than 30 seconds on a thing, and just draw them. And they're stick figures and words and arrows, and it doesn't make any sense, but it gets things going. And then I pick a couple to work through digitally.
So one of the other things that you creatives struggle with a lot, now this is not just creatives, by the way, is perfectionism, right? This is like the big anchor that a lot of people have in their businesses. So much so that I went and wrote an article on it and built a whole tool to try, and I have a whole process for people who are struggling with perfectionism to try and get through it. However, what is your perspective on perfectionism? Is in the creative world, I imagine it's even more amplified.
Yeah, I mean, I think I find that with creative stuff, I get to a point where like, and I'm ready to be done with this. This is ready. And depends on where I am in the process. If it's a first draft for a client, it just has to be good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to change. And if I waste time making it perfect, I'm wasting time. I think as I get closer to a final thing, then I'll try and get it polished. Or sometimes, depending, like if it's content or something that I'm laying out, I have a colleague that I'll send it to for proofing, because I know that I'm terrible at that. So I'd rather pay someone to do it well, than spend my time on it. As far as perfectionism goes, it can get in the way if you're trying to make something too perfect too soon.
And what is perfect really?
Yeah, it's subjective.
Yeah. Perfectionism is all based on fear anyway, right? Like our fear of judgment, our fear of success, our fear of, there's like 7 or 8 different fears. I'll put a link in the show notes to all of this, to this tool I've created around perfectionism, but it's like one of these things that I think is amplified in the creative world because there is so much subjectivity, right? It is not an objective. It's not like either you got it done or you didn't get it done. It's like you got it done, but was it right?
Yeah.
And there's no yardstick with which to measure a creative effort.
Right.
It's all in the eye of the beholder, right? So you've been doing this for a while. I want to ask you, how has this industry changed for you in the last decade?
It's a great question. I think about how I'm going to answer that, because I don't know that I really was in the industry for the first couple of years in my business, if that makes sense. Like I was so small and quiet, like I wasn't engaged with other designers or other people in business. I was just kind of like, does somebody want to hire me? In my quietest voice. So I think what I'm seeing now, there's this explosion of technology in places where you can be visible, and it's all digital, and significant shift away from print, although there's still tons of print, and I love print and paper and gorgeous things like that. But it's increasingly, what do you look like online? And that's everything online. and making those things consistent, and that there's so many really great self-serve tools for people in business that like you don't necessarily need a designer to do all those things as long as you have the right framework, if that makes sense. You know,
Okay.
so like if you're a solo business owner and you've got a really good brand definition, like I can help you with, then you can take that and go do your social media using those rules and go do your, you know, your other things, whatever they are.
So there's a lot more
Following those rules.
accessible, like I say, accessible tools and accessible
Mm-hmm.
frameworks for people. And so by nature of that fact, this must be distilling the work that you're doing down
Yeah.
to like some things that really require that craft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like if you, I'm for people who really want something um, that really tells their story, right? Like something's totally custom. Um, because you can go out there and through, you know, whatever dark alleys of the internet you go down, find a logo for $25 if that's okay with you. And it might be fine, you know, but it might not really tell your story either, you know?
Do you think that's a trend then? I think this is a bit of a trend in our sort of online business world, is that more and more people are able to do sort of the base level things themselves, whether it's a logo, whether it's something creative, or whether it's something totally else. Like a lot of the stuff I teach, people can take a run at that themselves to
Sure.
begin with. But when you start to go to service providers, it's when you're at that point where you're like, okay, now this needs to be leveled up. I need to
Mm-hmm.
mature in this regard. And so you're going to service providers to get that more custom work done,
Sure.
right? And to have somebody wrap their arms around your stuff and say, okay, now we're going to do something that you don't have necessarily have the skills to do, which I think is great, because when we
Mm-hmm.
were trying to sort of cover the gamut and teach people everything from start to finish, or provide those services from start to finish, it didn't allow us to really work towards what's personally great for us,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think I see that evolution in your business as well.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're this very specific service provider who is helping people in very specific ways, as
Yeah.
opposed to, doing broad brushstrokes across all different pieces of the industry. And I think that's actually a good thing, right?
Yeah.
People might see that as taking away work, but I think it's actually a good thing to getting us to
Mm-hmm.
businesses we actually really love, which is what I want everybody to have, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as I've gotten clear about the more work I've had, the more I've been able to refine what it is that I'm doing. And I'm delivering consistent results that way. And I'm getting more and more of the people who want that kind of work and experience, you
Good.
know?
Yeah. Awesome. So you've had this tremendous growth and you have had this great learning. What's been the most pivotal moment in your business?
Um, I don't know if it's the most pivotal, but this moment comes to mind, and it's around um, a bid I put out for a web design project, and it was for the time like I was throwing up at the price I was asking for. I was like, oh my god, they're never going to accept this. I am out of my mind, and they declined the job, and I found out later that they hired someone who bid higher than I did. So I was kind of like, that's some really essential information for me to process, you know, because I was sure that I had lost the business because I had bid too high. And that
And
wasn't the
so
case at all.
what did you take out of that experience?
One, for a lot of other reasons, that was not the right client for me. And it was a really great thing I didn't get that job. And two, that my pricing isn't crazy or vomit inducing in the least.
Well,
So,
we've had a conversation about vomit pricing, right?
yes. Yeah.
Okay. I have a question that I ask everybody that, is near and dear to me. This is a show about being real. These are not celebrities. This is not like some crazy, like people are out here doing some really good stuff, right? And so I want to know, what do you think is the biggest gap between what we hear out there and what we learn and what we, form opinions around, and what's actually real in business? What's the biggest gap?
Gosh, I feel like I'm going to be repeating some things that some of the other guests have said, but there's this idea, there's this sort of like glamorous, you've got all the things and you're making, $10,000 a day. And if you're not, you're failing, and you've got to have this offer and this launch, and you've got to be doing all the things to be successful. And that's bullshit. Like your success is defined by you. And are you happy doing the work? Is it sustaining your life? Like I don't have launches. I don't need to have launches. Like that's not the way I work. I don't have a book. I don't, you know what I mean? Like there's just stuff that I don't need to be doing. You know what I mean? And it's very easy. And I know I certainly was, when I was kind of casting around looking for like, how am I going to get myself and my business to the next level? There's a lot of noise out there about what you should be doing in your business. And, and it's not going to happen overnight, right? Like it's going to take time and effort and consistency and
Slow
learning you
business,
have.
man.
Yeah.
Slow business.
Yeah. Like you're not going to take a course and blast through it, and all of a sudden you're going to be making six figures. That's just not how it works.
That's not how it works?
No.
Oh,
no.
damn.
I know. Super disappointed when I found that out. But I actually like this way better.
Most people do. Most people do.
Yeah.
I talk about slow business. That is my thing. And the top feedback I have gotten from people who have been through this program is that they like the pace, right? Mm-hmm. Finally, they realize they're not deficient because they're not bringing in six figures in 6 weeks. That's a bunch of crap, right? Yeah. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work. And if it happens to work for you, it's going to fall down in a big crumbling mess very shortly. Yeah. So these, most people who are making the big money, they've spent years working at it, right? Years trying, and they're relentless triers.
Yeah. And that's the other part. I think you see people that are kind of like visible because they're at the peak of their success, and what you're not seeing are the years and years and years of effort and not being there yet. You're only seeing this little sliver of perfection right now.
Right. Okay. So you've had a tremendous year. Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What is next for you?
I would like to repeat what I've done this year. I want to have more awesome clients doing projects that I love, hit some financial goals, but without giving myself an ulcer in the process.
And what's it going to take for you to get there? What kind of support do you need?
It's funny. I feel like I'm already on track for that. Is that weird to say?
No.
I have so many great relationships. So like if in terms of support, like if there are people in parallel spaces to me and we can team up and help each other, aces. I love doing that kind of thing. So it's that easy.
Yeah, totally. And like this question is really just meant to help you ask for what you want, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a whole community of amazing people that are listening in right now that are, we are all in this to help each other. And that's what I'm trying to create here, is this community of people who are all supporting each other.
Yeah.
So that's your opportunity to ask for what you want. Right. Yeah. And that's what we learn over time, is that asking for what we want and creating that kind of alignment in our business is what's going to get us further ahead in whatever timeline works for us. Right.
Yeah. People are interested in connecting, reach out and let's have a conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. We're getting to the end of our time. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Yeah. Can you tell our listeners where to find you?
Yes. I am at wildblackberrystudio.com. And I also have a Facebook page. Same thing, Wild Blackberry Studio. I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you're pretty active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a lot of nice connections on there.
Great. Okay. And you mentioned that you had a free offer to share with our listeners. So tell us a little bit more about where we can find that. And of course, we'll put all of the links for everything in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so I have it's just a freebie. It's my How to Get Killer Headshots guide. I went through a really fun process of getting headshots for the first time for my business this year. And it was so much fun. I tried to capture those ideas for people who may be wanting to, like, if you were your brand, then you want some pictures that help tell that story. So it's a little bit of a guide for getting to that. And it's just for fun. So
super
that's
helpful.
Yeah, and that's on my website. It's a secret link, so when people look at the links at the bottom, they'll be able to. Yeah, in the show notes. Thanks. They'll be able to
put it in there for sure.
Yeah.
And those, what I can attest to is that getting the brand photos that you want has a lot to do with your designer being involved in the process and giving good guidance to the photographer. I know my designer, she put together a really, really amazing guide for my photographer, and we got exactly what we wanted. So that's an amazing gift. Thank you so much, Barbara, for this. What an awesome freebie for everybody. We'll put that in the show notes. And so we're going to wrap up, but this has been an awesome conversation. I'm so proud of you for everything you have achieved this year, and I can't wait to see what you do in 2020. So make sure and go out and check out Barbara and her incredible offer for you guys. And thank you so much for tuning in today to hear this story. The episodes that you're listening to are all featuring members of my free private Facebook group called the Real Deal Business Coaching Group, where we have daily prompts to help you focus on building your business and sharing your everyday challenges, bi-weekly virtual coffee chats, open coaching once a month, and member support from this incredible community. And if you'd like to join our community, or if you like to be featured on this show, I'd love for you to come and hang out with us in this group. The link's in the show notes, or search up Real Deal Business Coaching in Facebook to find us. So thank you again for being here. And if you've enjoyed today's content, I'd love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on. This helps us share these stories with an even bigger audience. So until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.